1.
Farts. Old farts. 2 old farts. Steve and Dave. Sometimes you find a diamond in the rough. Not this time, though. This is just rough. 2 old farts. There is no better waste of time. Two guys. 2 old guys. A lot of BS and more drivel than you can shake a stick at. Steve and Dave. God help us.
Now that is a beautiful, beautiful, may I say, introduction, and I'm sure World Voice Guy, aka Rob Vega, aka Raw Woods, is going to love that when he sees it on January the 3rd.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just because it's Friday, Steve. So
It is Friday.
So
Very
if it's
excited.
Friday, it has to be one of our favorite shows.
One of our favorite shows.
Here we go, guys. Hold on.
Here we go. Hey, welcome to the Remote Show with Michael Maturo.
How are you doing today?
Well, that is definitely remote and a faraway picture. And guess where he's doing his show from?
Where's that?
New York. Just saying.
Oh.
I know you've got that deal with the Lago Spank of New York that you get $1. So I'm just trying to help you because you gave him all your personal details. So I'm hoping that works out well for you. So
yeah, I'm having difficulty with my bank account at the moment, but other than that, everything should be fine.
Yeah, no, you keep going the way you're going. You're doing great. I'm very proud of you.
Yeah.
So that you're branching out. Should we bring Michael in?
Yeah, it's his gig. It's
I
the
know,
remote
it's his
show,
gig.
guys.
All right, everybody.
There he
Happy
is, and he's
Friday.
remote. Happy Friday.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah. Good
How are you,
afternoon.
gentlemen?
It's very, very good. And it's a couple days before the pagan holiday that the Jews started. You're all welcome. Thank you.
The pagan holiday is approaching. That's right.
Yes.
And we're in the midst of Hanukkah. So
Yes.
we've got that going on too. So this is the week of light, as I think we mentioned last week. This is a whole week of light festival holidays.
It's very nice.
Okay.
It is very nice. It's very important, I think, to honor that, to honor the spirituality and the solstice. So I'm in upstate New York, and we're in the midst of a brutal windstorm. So there's no power, there's no internet. We're doing this as the remote show should be done sometimes,
remotely,
which is from the phone remotely. Yeah, with all the backup power and backup lights. So this is sometimes how you have to do it because the show must go on.
There you go. So,
Well,
we're very glad you can make it.
I mean, you touched upon that, but I mean, if you're working remotely and this sort of thing happens, I mean, tell us exactly how you're dealing with it today.
Yeah. The main thing is, luckily, I have cell phone service up where I am on the hill, and the cell phone service is good enough to handle the video chat. And I have a little battery operated light. So at least I have a little bit of light going on here. And I also have battery backup. So if the power is out, but the internet is available, I can still run on my regular system. But I also have the ability to go to a local coffee shop in the event that I need to really get on and it's having real trouble here. So there's a few different options, but the main thing is having some sort of backup, having some sort of plan B for when things really hit the fan.
Yeah,
I've got a gerbil and a wheel, and it goes like this. So that's what we feed him once a week, so he keeps the power going.
Michael, is that important then if you're working remotely that we're joking about it being, cold as it is today for you guys, but I mean, to have that plan B, actually have it and work it and test it, run it a few times. Because, if everything falls out, I know people here, when things fall out, they jump off to the library or to the coffee shop or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think it's always smart to have a plan B and to have one that's tested. And in the rare event that the cell phone doesn't work, there are places to go. There's three or four towns in different directions, depending on which direction I need to get away from the storm. But that is something to consider. And in a remote scenario, this is important for even companies to think about when they're launching their remote work processes, is you have to think about what happens in inclement weather, because you don't have everybody centrally in an office, which means you have to think about all these different points of failure as opposed to just one facility. So it is something to think about. And it's something that in a way I've kind of taken for granted after having been a remote worker for it's now 7 or 8 years. So it is something I think about whenever I go to a new location, is what happens if. And if I needed to go off of video and just have audio, that's even one more way to step it down and maintain a connection.
Which for this would really suck because people actually want to see you.
No, we want to do this has to be done with video. This has to
yes,
be
yes. But you know what's really interesting? When COVID's hit, all these people were going to, like all the Caribbean islands are like, come here and remote work and come do this and come do that. And so some of them actually made it that, like, you know, you could literally go through a hurricane and still remote work. And others made it sort of like when the little gerbil in the wheel and the hut fell down, you were done. And then I had friends that did that, which was interesting. I had friends that went to Europe. They did that part of it. I had friends that would go back like to their ski lodge homes, and they're like, no, this will work. But it really is interesting when you look at infrastructure, right? Like now in the United States, we're going through like whatever, it's a nor'easter that's wiping out the whole country. So it's very interesting to see who's prepared and who's not. And because in certain areas, I don't even care if you're in a city, it just gets cold and that's it. You have no power. And that's a big thing. And it's the rural towns sometimes that it's actually, but I agree with you, as a remote worker, we have a battery power pack about yay big that can go for 25 hours. This is funny. You plug it in, it charges up, and it can run everything in the house for about 20 hours. We use it at remote things, at remote locations. So we've already charged it just in case. Because here in Texas, it's -8, which is about 14 Fahrenheit. So it's -8 Celsius.
Yeah, you're getting cold weather over there.
It's cold, right? And it's going to get worse. And then I think by the end of next week, like next Friday when we see everybody, it's going to be like 20 Celsius, which is about 70 Fahrenheit. And it's sort of like, oh, okay. So,
which is the weird thing happening in upstate New York, because now that we're getting this brutal windstorm, the temperatures are actually going up. So it's supposed to be something like 50 degrees Celsius today on a day when it probably should be 20 or 30.
You mean 50 Fahrenheit, not Celsius. 50 degrees. 50 degrees Celsius would be like 130 degrees. And that's real climate change.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want that.
No. But I think it's important when people decide they're going to do remote work. I think you have to think about what if something does happen, like somebody there's a car accident or a truck hits your power station and you're out for 3 or 4 days. If you're in Florida or in other parts where you get hurricanes, what happens if a hurricane comes? If you're in the rest, apparently all of America today, or North America, if there's a whatever they're calling it, an Arctic freeze coming through, what happens if that happens? I mean, there's all these things I don't think people actually think about unless you've done it.
You need to think, and maybe this whole remote work push is actually good to get people to think a little bit more about resilience,
right?
And think about how they're going to get through trouble like that. And it's up here. We've been very fortunate that the utilities are actually very well prepared for this kind of weather,
right? And
they're well prepared to drive into action. So they say the power will be restored in a few hours, and they're usually right about that. The internet usually comes, so it's usually not down for more than a few hours at a time. And you have to really assess that when you're looking at a place to go.
Yeah. Well, I know our guy in South Africa, Roll, when we do shows with him, he'll be like, he's got his generator going, he's got the backup going, he's got 15 things. He says they have rolling blackouts all the time. So he said to us, like, I'm the only guy on the street with lights on.
Wow.
So he is always, and we did a show a few weeks ago with him where literally the power went off. We lost him for about 5 minutes, and we talked about dim sum, darling, in Midtown Manhattan. And then he came back on because I forgot to flip the switch, and we're like, don't worry about it. So he's, for remote work, because he's a voiceover guy, he's literally the most prepared person I think I've ever met.
You have to do it. Yeah. Your livelihood depends on
Michael, I was going to ask you about remote workers. Are these people, a lot of them, are they on commission only? So if you're not working and not being able to perform, you're not earning.
I think it depends on the job. There are a lot of commission only jobs out there, but most of the remote work that I've encountered is salary plus bonus or salary plus
Okay.
commission.
Right.
And there, in fact, part of the benefits of remote work is this concept of unlimited paid time off. So as long as you're not interrupting the flow of business, and as long as you're keeping things covered, you could take time off to accommodate a crisis of some sort. But but there's usually some sort of it's usually not exactly tied to that commission only status.
Yeah. We used to do that with our team. Like I said, we used to give them like Fridays off or whatever. Like I said, I love remote workers. They get more done in a day than most people get done in a week because they want that time.
They
Like
want it.
they'll get up at 6 a.m. and work until midnight one day because they know that they've done 3 days
They'll
worth
do
of
it.
work, and they're like, yeah, I'll answer my phone call the next 2 days and I'll go back. And I'm good with that because I get more out of a remote worker. I find that I get people that sit around in the office all day.
Yeah, I think there's I mean, like we were talking about, I think a couple episodes ago, it definitely is about the type of person
Right.
who can work successfully in a remote position. And not everybody can, but the
Right.
ones who can, the ones who take it seriously, the ones who really think about it in a way of saying, I'm going to do this job in a very effective way, they really think intentionally about how they're going to be a remote worker, and they can be very effective, more so than someone who's just going to an office just to sit there and
Right.
and be at the
Collect
water
a check.
cooler.
Yeah.
The
No,
check.
I think I'm being fortunate enough that I've been doing remote work for a long time.
Yeah.
I like it. I get more done, and it also lets me be more creative. And if I need to stop and have a cigar to think,
You can do it.
I can go have a cigar, sit outside, and just think about, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I can work through all the issues. In an office, unfortunately it's not the 80s anymore, where I could smoke a
Right.
cigar in the office,
Right.
right? And I could be just chill. And now it's like, oh, you smoke? Oh my God! Like, calm down, people. Like,
Yeah.
everybody has a process, and we've gotten to that point where you can't let people have their process because you'll offend somebody. And I'm more
That's
offended.
the
I'm more offended that I've offended the pussies in the society. So being a remote worker, totally good. So
letting people have their process. I think you said it
Yeah.
right there. Is everybody does have a process for if you're the person who's intentional about it, everybody has a process to be the most
Right.
effective, to be the most creative, to be the most productive. And not every office allows that to be. Not every office allows that to be the case. And so in that case, remote work and having your own environment, having your own space,
Yep.
having your own choices when to interact with people actually is a new way to do it.
Well, that's why we used to let people bring their pets to the office. I didn't care. It's like, as long as your dog is friendly, your cat's friendly, your
Yeah,
rooster,
right.
your gerbil, I don't care. Bring whatever you want. And I think that's the whole thing. When people work at home, if you're like a working mom or dad and you have kids, I think that's cool because you're like, oh, Johnny has tuba practice. I get to go to tuba practice, but I can,
Yeah.
and I think that's cool. Instead of like, I need to take 2 hours off. I would tell my team, I don't care. Don't come
Get
in,
it
come in,
done. Yeah.
get your work done. And there were certain days where I'd be like, you have to be here. Here's why.
Yeah.
They got it. And then the other days I was like, if they need, like, one guy used to do our budgets, and I'd be like, his name was David. I go, David, you don't have to be here if you need to just be at home and not have everybody screaming at you while you're working on a 950-page budget program. And he's
Right.
like, got it. And he would show up 3 days later and go, look, my budget's done. If I let him in the
Yeah.
office, it'd be 3 months later. And I think that's part of it. But I know you wanted to talk about the brain drain with the
Oh,
baby
yeah.
boomers. And I think that ties into kind of remote work as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, this was a good topic that David brought up last week.
Yeah.
It's just toward the tail end of the conversation, and we were talking about this idea of intergenerational wisdom, which is
Right.
the way that this is a phrase that is also being used, not just brain drain, but this idea of how do you get wisdom between the generations. And it's something that as a person who's been in the workforce really only for 15 years, I've always been fortunate to have mentors and people who've been willing to train me and educate me and help me in my own work. And I think that people who take their work seriously and take their honing of their craft seriously want to get that mentorship. And actually, a study that from recruiter.com talks about how 75% of millennials do want mentorship, and they do actively seek it out. And that's important because we've got until 2029, we've got 10,000 people a day who are entering 65 and older, entering that age group, which means that, the people who have all of this knowledge and wisdom are not necessarily aging out, but they're getting up in age, and we need to make sure that we connect with them before they're not working at all.
But I don't think it's not 1940 or 1950. People are living to be like 80, 90,
That's
100,
right.
and they're healthier. So I don't think when you hit 65, 70, it's great that the government wants to give me my money back when I'm 65 or 70, right? My Social Security. That's nice. If there's any money left, I get it back. I'm happy. However, if I was 70, 75, 80, and my faculties are still
You're still
going like
consulting.
I still consult and sit on boards to this day, and I'm in my late 50s, early 60s. But I mean, I still do that. But I mean, if I was like Mel Brooks is 99, still going strong. Warren Buffett's in his 80s, still going strong. If you what I find when I'll talk to a recruiter about something, like I'll be at the dog park and we have a couple of recruiters and go, so what do you look for when you look for people? Oh, and they give you this little blurb, but I'm like, the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because once they see someone has 25, 30 years of experience, they're like, oh, they're just too old. And I'm like, then they're not too old. They just know more. They've done more. They're a great mentor to help everybody out. Like some of the boards I sit on are like, and I mean this, and they're kids, right? They're 20 or 30 years old, and they're like, I'm running a company. What do I do? And so, and then, and one board I sit on with a bunch of generals, which is very interesting, military guys, and the CEO of that company is like, I need guys who really can help me. So we're on the phone with him at least once a week. There's one I sit on the board of that. All they do is acquisitions, which is great. And it's like me and a bunch of guys, like we all came from Wall Street. Everybody's either whether it's accounting, finance, or law. And he realized, he says, I know what I want. I just don't know how to get there. And you get other companies that they just look at people. Oh, you're over 60. We can't help you. And I'm like, that's pathetic.
Those can't be the companies that are going to succeed, and those can't be rational companies that are dismissing an entire age group, especially an age group that is experienced and has that knowledge to contribute.
I don't know about that. I think in America,
I have a thing with that as well, because sorry, Stephen, but it almost seems as if you're considered to be a threat. Yes. And it seems to be like from people from 35 to 45, and they think, I've just got my chair under the table, and then this old fart comes in, and he knows more than I do. And I've come across that a few times. It's.
And also, do you think that's a mindset problem? Yes. Because that might be a bigger problem if they're not confident enough to think, I want to get the best knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, maybe those people are measuring me on with the same yardstick as they were looking at their own parents. My parents don't understand what I'm doing. My parents couldn't understand what I'm doing in business. So how the hell can you? But Steve touched on it, as we spoke about it last week. It's not so much wisdom, as there's just been a hell of a lot of water that's traveled under my bridge. So you've seen a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of scenarios. You've been good in some. You've been shit in others. And you've been around people who have solved it. You've been around people who haven't solved it. So you can. That's a whole load of stuff that you can add to this tapestry, because businesses are much like a tapestry. It needs all those little nuances to make it succeed.
I mean, we're talking about the ideal. We're talking about ideal businesses here. We're talking about the ideal state. I love the idea of a tapestry. I was thinking of the question could be, how do we keep a good mix of not just ages, but experiences and mindsets? And when people talk about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I sometimes think that they're missing the point for very rigid demographics, as opposed to the different mindsets that contribute to a successful organization in a more broad sense.
It doesn't seem as if ageism is included in that. I mean, you have here in Europe, you have EU laws that says So if your company is so big, yes, there's so many people from ethnic backgrounds, so many people who are classified disabled, all sorts of things. And but they don't say, oh yeah, and you have to have lots of older people.
They don't say that.
But no.
But I think that's the unfortunately the mentality is that when you hit a certain age, you should be put out the pasture. And I think the problem with that is that, like I said, people are living longer, people are
Yep.
smarter. Old people aren't like old people of the, like my one friend who's in his 90s goes, the new 50 is 90 type of thing. It's like, and he runs and he does, and where everyone I know is very athletic. They're still very smart. They don't sit around and die. They're not looking to die. I used to joke with people, and I used to say, I'm not old enough to retire, and I'm not old enough to die. What do you do?
Yep.
I mean, I'm fortunate that I sit on a bunch of boards, and I can, with David, do startups and have companies, and we can do our own thing. But if I was unemployed and I had to look, I would say my chances of someone hiring me, even though I've got enough education and enough background, done enough of everything, would be zero.
This
So
is
Well,
really
here's what's
that,
interesting. Yeah. Let me just finish. Here's what's interesting. The boards I sit on, I sought out none of them. They saw my profile on LinkedIn and they're like, hey, would you be interested? And I'm like, okay. And I'll hear what they're doing. And I'm like, you know what? This could be fun. And it's a lot of fun because you get to engage with people, whether they're in their 20s or 30s or in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. Some of these generals we're dealing with, I think, were from the Civil War. And it's just really cool because you still learn. And I think that's what these little 20-year-old HR kids don't get. It's like, just because someone like started their career in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, they have a lot to give. Don't look at them as, oh, you're old. They probably have more energy than you do, because most of them, and I mean this in not a nice way, they're slugs. They're tired, they want to sleep. And old people, for lack of a better term, old people, right? Older people, they're on the go. They want to go. They go, but we got things to do. And all these kids are like, oh, it's 8 a.m. I got to get up. I'm in my pajamas. What? Go. So I think that it's a mindset thing, and that really starts at the companies that I'm involved in and the companies that I've started and have run. I'm like, we hire the best. Like, we look at your CV. I don't care if it says you graduated in 1903. If you're the best for the gig, come in and you're doing the gig. So my whole team would be diverse from like 20-year-olds to like 65-year-olds in finance that wanted gigs. And I'd be like, you're perfect. Do the job, because they could do the job and they all help each other.
So this is actually giving some advice then to, because you mentioned HR professionals who are maybe not as professional and not really thinking well. This is a good way for new HR professionals to differentiate themselves by not being age discriminatory and by actively being more open-minded to the diversity of experiences that are out there.
Sorry, Michael, but there's a problem there. I mean, if you're an HR professional within an organization, then the organization has to make that decision, from 0 to 99, we're going to take someone on. If you're a recruiter, on the other hand, it doesn't make any difference if you got the best candidate. I've worked for a national recruitment company for 4 years, doing their business development, bringing them new clients in-house. And the clients came in, happy bunnies, well, okay, da-da-da-da. And then what happens is you get this remit for a job, and that's it. Well, we've got all these candidates. No, this is what we want. They have to be 25 years old with 10 years experience. No 9 to 5 mentality. They have to work for throat and safety a week. And they have to be beautiful people, and that's probably was all written down on this piece of paper. Now, it used to be, I don't want this particular ethnic group. I don't want the people of color. They used to write that in the job descriptions and give that to the recruiters. That's a big no-no. They can't do that. They still do it. They whisper in people's ears. And what happens is, so the recruiter, he has a big style. She has a big pile of paper of all these people that fit the job profile. And then what happens is, because they don't have enough time and they don't want to lose the client, they want to offer the client a portfolio of where they think that's going to be successful so they can earn some money. And they give it to a junior recruiter or to a trainee and say, just go through that very quickly. And they say, oh, too old, too old, too old, not good. And then they get this pile of paper, and then they then present that to the client.
Yeah.
So there's lots of nuances in that. You know, as much. I mean, I when I left there, I was 60. You know, I've been forced to work again, self-employed, with some degree of success and some degree of failure.
Mhm.
But you know, I'm now what, 65, going on 66. I'm unemployable. Unemployable.
So what we're also speaking to then are leaders of companies and people who have influence on executive leadership,
Right.
to say
Yeah.
that a mentality that's limited, that's focused on age and scarcity, as opposed to an open-mindedness and experience to that, we're actually saying that's maybe the better way to go. And I think, like we were talking about a few episodes ago, about this idea that maybe we need to do a course for executives for remote work. I mean, it almost feels like we're also on this show, which I really enjoy, we're also shaping what we think of as the ideal mindset for running a company in a way that is great for the 21st century.
Right. I mean, if you're running the French Foreign Legion, I get it. I want 20 and 30-year-olds because I want people that are going to scale wall, whatever. I got that.
Yeah.
But if I need to be doing
But even
investment
there, you
banking or
need
whatever.
generals. Even
Well,
there, you need,
no, I got that. But I'm just saying, if I need grunts on the ground, so if
Yes,
I need
right,
the ground for,
yeah.
right? But it's the same thing in investment banking. Like last year, I think it was last year, Goldman Sachs said their recruits in London, their new trainees were complaining that they had to work over 60-hour work weeks. And one of my friends who started at Goldman, when I started at Kidder back in bazillion years ago, we both laughed at that. We're like,
Yeah.
60-hour work week. That was a 60-hour day back in the day. Now they're complaining. So it's nice that you want a work-life balance. It's nice this now Goldman is cutting what, 40% of their staff and this and that. Why? Because their profits aren't what they used to be. And why? Because the new 5-year-olds are complaining about how they work. It's like, oh, it's too much. It's too hard. I think we need to stop and say, this is my organization, whatever it is, an investment bank, a medical firm, whatever you do. And I think you need to say, this is what we expect. And I think you need to stop as a society globally, pussyfooting around about, listen, you get work life. Listen, I don't care. Here's what I expect out of you.
The concept of
And that's
work-life
it.
balance is flawed as a phrase anyway. I mean, it really isn't about balance.
I agree.
I mean,
Right.
and people are finally catching on to it, to say this concept of balance is a ridiculous idea anyway, because there isn't balance, and you need to do sometimes you need to do a lot more time in one area than the other. The question is the quality of the work, the quality of the time that you're putting in, and sometimes that's going to take a lot more time than I guess it would be better said work-life alignment. I mean, your life and work should be aligned so that at the end of the day, you're happy and fulfilled with your life. I mean, that should be the important.
I think it was a very valid point that Stephen made. You know, I mean, I applaud him for how he employed people in the past. It's very much, very much the now thing to say to people, this is what has to be done. Please do it. When it's done, do whatever until the next project comes along. You know, what's wrong with that? We're all adults.
Because the problem is today, we're a very litigious society. And the other problem is when you talk about like the brain drain or the baby boomers leaving, or people, let's say from 55 plus that are now leaving the workforce. A lot of them aren't leaving the workforce because they want to leave the workforce. What's happening is that some 20-year-old guy that just got his MBA, who read some book that's never done crap in his life, all of a sudden says, oh, it'd be better if I bring in all my fraternity brothers or sisters because yada, 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 because this person doesn't fit in. Just because this person doesn't want to go drinking with you on a Friday night or do biking with you on the weekends, that doesn't mean that they don't fit in. They have their own life.
Table.
Yeah. I mean, they don't want to play. Yeah, they don't want to play ping pong with you all day.
No.
They want to do other things, and I think that's part of it. Like I said, I used to be our HR people would be like, okay, you're going to interview so and so for in your group, and I would come in and I'd bring one of our guys in our group, right? Because it's a team thing. And I'd literally say to them, I said, listen, we'll find out in 2 weeks, 1, if you can do the job, and 2, this is what I expect from you. If you can't do this, you're gone. I said, and if you can't live with my mentality, you're gone. And then I would leave and say it's up to, and people from my team, like the controller, the AR people, the AP people, the financial analysts, they did the interview because I don't really care if you don't get along with the other 4 or 5 people in finance.
Yeah,
That's the problem, right? I don't care if you get along with me. No one gets along with me, and I'm good with that, right? I tolerate people love animals. That's always the joke. So, and that would work because they would say, yeah, he's really fair. But if he calls you and says, I need this done, he
get
doesn't
it done.
care that you're at a movie on a Saturday. He wants it done. But there'll be times where he's like, I don't care. You want to leave at noon. Go to lunch.
Right.
Don't come back. And they said, so you have to understand the mentality is when we need it, we need it. And if
That's
I
right.
don't need it, I don't call on you. And then, and it was always hard to argue with me because like I think we said on one show, we used to get to the office at 5:30 in the morning, and we would work from 8 till 8 o'clock and then babysit 8 to 5. And then from 5 to 8 again, we would work. So it's hard to say to someone like me, I can't do something. I'm like, really? So and I would work the weekends, but see, weekends were nice because I got to be home. I had my
Yeah.
cigar. I'd sit outside, have my stuff on the outside table, and I would work. And it's nice and calming and it's chill, and I applaud the companies that I sit on the board with because a lot of them hire not just older, but younger. And they make sure that everybody, if you want to be mentored, you mentor. I used to tell people, I will
That's right.
mentor you as long as you want. If you can't put the cap on a pen, as long as you're going to try, I'm there for you. The minute you give up on you, I give up on you. And I would
Yeah.
tell people that, and they would look at me like, what? I'm like, yeah, because and I would also say to people, you live and die as a team. You're responsible for if he screws up, don't go, you screwed up. You can go, hey, you made a mistake. Let me show you what you did. So you don't do it again. And I said, then it reflects the whole team. I said, because if I catch the mistake, as they say, shit rolls downhill, right? So, and that's what people don't understand. It's like everybody can mentor, and a younger person can mentor an
Yes.
older person.
Yes.
There may be stuff they don't know, and vice versa. But it really
But you have
becomes
to have
a
that
team thing.
cohesion.
Yes,
You
and
have to
you
have
all
that
have to be the
cohesion.
mindset, and it has to be a mindset where I think you all understand
Yes.
we're in it together, and we either win together or we lose together. Not
That's
like
right.
I did it better than this person, because that's not a team. That's you. And then the problem with that is when you screw up, you'll probably just get fired. And I used
Oh,
to tell
I've
my team,
seen
you
that.
live and die by each other.
Yeah, I've seen that mentality of that blame game mentality
Yep.
at other places. And one of at where I am now at experience.com, we've talked about be the solution, which is
Right.
just being part of the solution instead of just pointing out what's wrong and then expecting somebody else to solve it.
Yep.
And it does seem like there's a mentality shift that has to happen for people to start. I talk about it in the course, just being proactive as an employee, as somebody who's contributing to the bigger mission. You have to be proactive in terms of how you reach out, how you take action, how you think about yourself as part of the solution overall.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of cultural shifts that we've been talking about in this show too, that I think we need to emphasize and encourage, not just in the place of remote work, although it's even more important and imperative to get it right in a remote organization, because there's less wiggle room, I think, because you aren't physically there. But at the same time, this really applies to any organization that's trying to get ahead in a very competitive world that's evolving very dynamically, that really needs everybody performing at its best. That's what we ultimately need.
And I think the other thing, a lot more remote work's going to happen because you see the real estate market just tanking, like just for New York, for example. David, I got you another dollar. Because what's happening is like Meta or Facebook or whoever they are this weekend, who cares?
Yeah.
They just canceled their lease at Harvard Yard or Hudson Yard for like 250,000 square feet. And another company. So there's all this emptiness now, right? So a lot of companies realized, and granted, there's some things where you need your engineering team or your team to be together every night, but I don't need to see you every day. I can still do my work. And I think that companies are realizing, I can save millions or even more if I don't have to rent out 50 billion, you know what I mean? So I think it's getting into that. I think you're going to see more of it over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years as technology even improves, where it'll be the virtual, where you put on a goggle and you're sitting in a room with your counterparts.
Well, we're even talking about it in rural in rural America up here
Right.
is the idea of different co-working spaces where people can just use the office space for a short period of time for 1 or 2 days a week, as opposed to taking it out for the entire week and then having the ability to interact with the people that maybe you've
Right.
worked with or you're working with in a single place.
It's like a
I think
WeWork
you're
almost.
going to see more. You're going to see more evolution of that, more
Right.
creative uses of those workspaces.
But that'd be like a WeWork or like whatever those other centers are called.
Yeah,
You know, where
those,
you rent
yeah.
the rent.
Spaces,
Although
We
those
used
are
to,
having a tough time too. But
yeah. Well, that's because of COVID, I think. And we used to use those, and I liked it because you meet different people with different things. And I was like, well, this is really
yeah,
cool,
it,
and you
it
learn a
works.
lot.
It works. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be quite expensive for a lot of people at the bottom, who just trying to step into it. But
Yeah, you
but
hang out
I hope the
Starbucks.
remote show itself will will just also try and illustrate to people. I've never met Stephen ever physically, and
right,
we've I've never met you, Michael.
that's
And
right.
I've only met you because through Stephen. So here we go.
That's
So
right.
so how this show has come around.
It's a
We're all
perfect example of it.
Yep, of remote
yeah,
work.
Yeah,
remote
that's right.
work. And
That's right.
Steve and I have had
And
this
of what's possible.
relationship for what now?
Over a year.
9 months. Yeah,
Over a
coming
year.
up for a year. Yeah, and we've never met. So and I'd probably walk past him in the street. 'Cause
Probably. And I had pants
Well,
on,
he's
so you
got the
wouldn't
hat,
even
so you can
recognize me.
spot him.
You can see me
yeah,
there. Michael and I have known each other, what, 2 or 3 years now, and
Yeah,
we've never met.
it's been 2 or 3 years now.
We
Yeah,
started during
Yeah.
COVID, yeah.
that's right. During
But
exactly during
yeah,
COVID, when everything was forced to be remote, and then we just continue it on.
yeah,
And the thing is, I think there's a new appreciation for meeting people face to face, which I do look
yes.
forward to meeting you gentlemen face to
Yep.
face one day. But when that happens, it'll be even more sweet than just than just it's. I think people took it for granted
Right.
before we didn't have the ability
There,
to do it.
there's something about pressing the flesh, as we say. And for all you
That's
people that
it.
think that's
oh yeah,
think that's dirty, that means shaking hands. But there's just something about pressing the flesh with somebody and like, how are you? And having a lunch, or in my case, a scotch and a cigar, and you
Yeah,
just sit there and you just like, it literally like Seinfeld. It's a meeting about nothing. And it's one
yeah,
of the I sit on a board, and how we met, we were all having cigars somewhere, and the guy's like, "What are you smoking?" And we were telling him, "I've never had one."
yeah,
And he says, he looks at the waitress and he says, I go, dude, we're good. Like, here, you'll take one of ours. And from that became a friendship. From that
yeah.
friendship became a couple months later, we would meet every now and then for cigars and scotch and hang out. And one day he goes, I own this company. I'm like, cool, good for you. He goes, and he knows what I did. And he goes, you want to sit on my board? I'm like, sure. And so you just don't know that pressing the flesh, if you will, or your
Yeah,
hobby, who you'll meet. Like, I don't try to sell myself when I meet someone. I'm like, hi, it's nice to meet you. Now leave me
yeah,
alone. And if you're just you, it works out really nice. And I think that's what people have to understand. It's like, it's okay to just be you.
Well,
And I think in
you're
remote
talking
work,
about
that's the best thing.
authenticity. You're talking about
Yeah.
authenticity, Stephen, and that's that's a really important concept these days,
Yep.
because again, people are not doing that, or they're not comfortable in their own skin, or they're
Yep.
not comfortable pissing people off with who they are,
Yep.
for the sake of going to somebody who just saying, well, look, somebody else is going to like who I am,
Yeah.
somebody else is going to like what I'm doing, and I'll just move on until I find that group, that tribe.
Not everybody is going to like you. And my mom
That's
told me
right.
this.
Not
My mom
everybody's
told me
gonna
this.
like it.
My mom told me this joke when I was a kid, and I think it's very cute and funny. The alarm goes off. The kid goes, I don't want to go to school today, to the mom. And the mom's like, why don't you want to go to school, Johnny? He goes, Mom, the teachers don't like me. The students don't like me. Even the janitor doesn't like me. And his mom goes, listen, Johnny, you're 43 years old. You're the principal of the school. You have to go. And I think that's the mentality. Like, they don't like me. It's okay if people don't like you. That probably means you're doing something right.
That's
It's
right.
okay to not. In New York, we say we don't argue. We just all yell at each other, and then we all go to lunch because we don't care. But it's okay to do that. And even remotely, like, we'll be on heated calls, but at
Yep.
the end of the day, like, we'll all talk to each other after the call, like, oh my God, and we'll talk about, and it's done. And I think that's the other thing. It's like, I think the cultural change from, if you do remote work or you do whatever, And the baby boomers, you get these baby boomers that are trying to conform to the 14-year-old way. Like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. It's okay
Oh,
to hurt their
no.
feelings. It's okay to be politically incorrect. It's okay to say things that make sense. But if you have
Yeah,
to watch everything you say, then really,
yeah,
yes, then you
that's
should retire and die, because you're not going to be able to live. And not just because someone yells at you, that doesn't mean, as we talked about last week, if you're arguing with someone and they raise their voice, they're not really trying to yell at you. They're just getting a point across. Let them get it across. It's
yeah,
okay. And I think that's the younger generation doesn't understand that, where the older people are like, we can yell at each other, and it's like, we're still going to go to lunch, right? I mean, like, we already yelled. Now
yeah.
we have lunch. And it's just a different mentality. And not for the best, because you'll talk to someone, they go, they offended me. I'm like, I'm sorry, what did they say to you? And they'll tell me, and I'm like, no, really, what did they say to you? And they'll tell you, and I just start laughing. I'm like, no, where did they offend you? Because they raised their
Right.
voice. And I think people have to understand that you can be civil, and you can raise your voice at each other, you can swear at each other, whatever, but at the end of the day, you get it done. And whether you're remote or you're in an office, it's okay.
Well,
It's
that's the
just some
cultural
words.
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's the
but it's
cultural
not for the
shift.
better. In the olden days,
It's
I think it worked better. And
Yeah, I mean, that's
I'm
what
not
all
saying,
old, that's
yeah.
what
I
all
mean,
old people say, Steve.
no. I mean, listen, I love the new stuff, and I love some of the changes. Like, I'm glad you can't say certain words at work, like the N word's a biggie, and get K word well, kite's not really, it means circle, but anyway, there's certain things I'm very glad that you can't say. But you know what? Sometimes someone does get upset, and so it's okay. And remotely, the only difference is remote work. If I'm annoyed with somebody and I say goodbye to them, I have a cigar, I can go scream and holler in the house. No one's gonna know. But in an office, you can't do that. And I think people just have to understand everybody has a different way to relieve stress. And not everybody is going to be like, hi, nice to meet you. Seriously, they're the people that are going to go postal and take out the whole
I
family.
think we have to,
So,
yeah, we have to acknowledge the variety of the way that people interact with each other. And this
yeah,
authenticity concept it means that you have to really take everything for not so personally, and
right.
actually just take things for what they are, and be
Yeah.
accommodating to each other. So
Got to put your big boy pants on, as my one friend would
there
say.
you
Yeah, I think
go.
I had this discussion, I think, with Steve. I don't think we were recording, and I did telesales for many, many years. I ran telesales teams, and of course, when they employ all these people, oh, you get this basic wage, and you're going to earn all this commission, and yeah, you'd be able to buy a Ferrari like all the all the investment bankers have if you make them lots of appointments. Blah 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 blah. But what they don't tell these poor kids who just come out of university is they're going to be crapped upon from a great height. And I used to say to them right from the beginning, I said, it's a bit like being a boxer. If you want to be a boxer, you know somebody's going to hit you.
That's right.
That's just how it is, and it stings. It's not personal. The guy, if you're sparring with someone or you want to take his medal and you want to take his title, he's going to hit you. That's part of the gig. And it's the same with when you're doing, telesales or remote telesales, which I did for a long time as well. People are going to rant and rave at you and abuse you and say all sorts of nasty stuff to you. And it stings. But you just got to shrug it off and think, okay, well, that's
Well,
part of
here's
the
the
job.
nice thing. But the nice thing is, if you're into
Sorry,
that,
Steve.
you can go to,
Just the last point on that is because
yeah.
what annoyed me more than anything else about these people is that they're never told that. And so we
Right.
have what Steve says. They'll come into the office and they'll be crying. Oh, this guy said I was a complete dick. Oh, this guy said this, or he questioned, questioned my parentage.
Right.
Really, you know,
Listen,
and I said, well, that's normal. I said, do you know the guy? Do you know where he lives? No. Does he know where you live? No. Okay, so you just had a telephone number and you called him cold. What's he going to do? Sing and dance when he picks the phone up? No, there's a whole way of dealing with people, and he was probably just pissed off, and so you
That's
got
right.
it, But it's so yeah, it's a generational thing as well, because like Steve said, all these young kids. I mean, I had 5 graduates working in a team. You put them all in one bag and shake them up. There wasn't one sensible one that came out the other end. They're all great guys. Don't get me wrong; their mothers loved them as well. But they weren't told that business hurts.
Yeah. I think I mean, I guess you need to be told that, but I think I think you just
Yeah,
get this,
and
just people not taking everything so personally, and just understanding that there's going to be some pain once in a while, and that's just part of growing.
Yep.
I guess you have to be told that now.
You do,
yeah, I
which
mean, the
is really
difference
kind
is
of pathetic, isn't it?
that Stephen's up front. I mean, he's just as he is, and we love him for that. But I can imagine that if you had not met Steve before, and you get this, you think, oh wow, oh. But at the end of the day, it's a bit like being a dentist, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to give you more pain to take the pain away, but my pain's only there for a little while. So
Right.
and but the kids today just don't see. Oh, no, well, pain. Oh no, I shouldn't have any of that. Oh no, you shouldn't speak to me like that.
That's a much bigger issue. Maybe a topic for another day, because this idea of pain aversion is a real problem. So that might
be the next,
Michael.
the
We have
next
enough.
issue.
We have enough topics to do with you for the next 20 years. So
yeah, I think we do. I think
we're good on the topic stuff. But gentlemen, I think we have to I was just in the Financial Times. They have a beautiful picture of the Arctic freeze that's coming from where Santa lives, apparently, all the way down. And in the article, it was saying that Miami is going to be today, I think, 5 Celsius. So for you people that don't know math, that's about 40 degrees. It's funny when I look at that. They're talking about it, and I'm thinking, I'm sitting here at like a -7, -8 Celsius, which is about 14, 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm just like, and I think our high today is like, I don't know, maybe -5, which is 20 Fahrenheit. So I'm just like, this is awesome. But it's, I think the next couple of days is going to be nice.
The wood stove in
you
my
go.
rural American home.
Nice. and you'll send, and to everybody, because this show is going to come out right before the pagan holiday that they call Christmas.
That's right.
So Merry Christmas to all you pagans,
to all.
and to the Jews, my people, because I am King of all Jews. It says that on my business card. Happy Hanukkah. There's a few more days left. Enjoy lighting the candles. Michael, it's always a pleasure to see you. We will see you next Friday, God willing.
Yeah.
And there's no more Arctic freezes coming to wipe everybody out.
That's right.
And
All
we'll
right, gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, David's playing his new ending.
Oh, okay. You got ending music.
Nice. You gotta like the whole thing. We haven't figured this one out, everybody. So we're gonna practice with this. But we're gonna kill the recording, David, so you can kill the ending. This is where he says thank you too. Thank you, everybody. Have a happy and healthy holiday. We'll see you next Friday.